Hi, I'm Keith Decandido, author of Save the Cheerleader, Destroy the World, and you're listening to the Primatech Files.
Hey, Primatech peeps! Welcome back to the Primatech Files, a Southgate Media Group podcast dedicated to all things Heroes Prime and Heroes Reborn related things. I am Lilith, and joining me today is Ricky.
Hello.
And of course, you heard the bumper, so you know what that means. We got an interview.
Yay.
So, without further delay, let us have our guest introduce himself to you guys.
Hi, I'm Keith Decandido. I've been writing fiction for a little over 21 years now, so my writing career is now old enough to drink. And I've written a lot of media tie-in fiction in about 25 different licensed universes, ranging from Star Trek to Supernatural, Sleepy Hollow, World of Warcraft, Marvel Comics, CSI, Leverage, some other stuff, because I can't remember all of them because there's over 25 of them. The most, Stargate SG-1, I've got a novel of that coming out. And most germane to this particular discussion is Heroes Reborn. I wrote one of the 6 novellas that were put out to tie into the new Heroes Reborn miniseries. I wrote Save the Cheerleader, Destroy the World, which filled the universe in on what Claire Bennett was doing between when she jumped off the Ferris wheel and when June 13th happened. So
let's start at the beginning. How did you get into writing, or what's your earliest memories of writing and stuff like that?
Writing is one of those things I always wanted to do. People ask, why'd you become a writer? It's like, I don't know, the urge was always there. The first thing I wrote actually was a thing I wrote on construction paper at summer camp when I was 6 years old. It was called Reflections in My Mirror. I still have it.
Nice.
Dug it up when I was cleaning out the garage recently, and that urge was always there. Obviously, I didn't get paid for it until I was a little bit older than 6. I wrote stuff in high school for like the school paper and the literary magazine and such, and then again in college, where I actually worked on the newspaper at my university. Fordham University was a Columbia School of Journalism award-winning production, and I worked for them, and that went really well. And that led to me eventually going into editing initially. I worked as an editor for a bunch of different places, some magazines, some book packagers and producers and such. And then in 1998, I had sold a few short stories. I had just sold 2 novels, and I decided, okay, let's make a go of this for real. And I've been freelance ever since. I still work as an editor on a freelance basis, but the vast majority of my income comes from writing, and has since 98.
Nice.
So
you've still got your first piece of writing from 6. So you because with me, every now and then I'll go into like my books and I'll be like, oh, it's been a while, I'll get rid of them. Are you a little bit of a hoarder, or is it just one of those things that you just randomly found?
Well, I mean, it was something I did, so I kept it.
Yeah.
I'm less sentimental about other people's books. And I live in an apartment in New York City, so shelf space is limited. So I do occasionally weed the books, but I always keep. I mean, everything I worked on, I keep.
Oh, okay.
So you've written a lot of different types of books, even comic books and tie-ins. Do you have like a favorite kind of format for writing?
Oh, I mean, prose is where I've done most of my work and what I keep coming back to. That's where I'm particularly comfortable and seem to have the most success. I wouldn't mind doing more comic books, certainly. I've done, the comic book work I've done has been a bit limited, but, I've always enjoyed it. It's a different process, and it's a lot of fun. And actually, one of the best writing experiences of my career was the 3 years I worked on the various Farscape comic books, with Boom Studios, which I did in collaboration with Rockne O'Bannon, the creator of Farscape.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That was fantastic. But, in general, prose seems to be my niche. So,
Fair enough. So before we get on to Heroes stuff, we're just wondering, did you watch the original series when it was airing, or? Oh yeah, awesome. Were you one of those?
I was a huge fan.
Were you one of those ones who watched it all the way through, or did you kind of peter out after season?
No, I didn't quite make it all the way through. They lost me about halfway through the 3rd season. And it was in the break. It was in the mid-season break in the 3rd season. I didn't really bother watching it again when it came back.
Okay.
My enthusiasm had dimmed, actually mostly for the 2nd season. I kind of stuck with the 2nd season out of inertia, but it wasn't working for me. I thought they were repeating themselves a little too much.
That's all right. Did you, go on.
Oh, you're probably going to ask the exact same question. Did you go back and watch the rest before you, started writing Save the
Yeah, absolutely. That's part of the process. At least for me, whenever I do any tie-in work, even if it's something I'm already familiar with, I'm still going to go back and dive into it as much as humanly possible. I mean, I've written, the license in which I've written the most stuff is Star Trek. And
yes.
I've been watching Star Trek literally since birth. But even so, if I'm doing, like, for example, my most recent Star Trek project was called The Klingon Art of War, which was a big coffee table book that was written as a philosophical text. Even though I am familiar with pretty much every Klingon episode of Star Trek, because I've written a lot of Klingon-based fiction in particular, when I sat down to do that book, I sat down and watched a bunch of different Klingon episodes on purpose. Yeah, and this is even though I've got them practically memorized. When I got the gig to write a Leverage book, I was a huge fan of Leverage when it was on the air, and I watched every episode religiously and never missed it. But I still sat down and mainlined all 4 at the time seasons once I got the gig to write the book, because you pay attention to different things when you're going to be writing in it than you do as somebody just casually watching it. And by the same token with Heroes, once I got the gig to do this, I sat down and I watched every single episode of all 4 seasons, which enabled me to actually finally see the back half of season 3 and all of season 4. And, you know, if nothing else, it got me the chance to see some interesting characters who I didn't know about. Like, I totally missed the fact that Robert Nepper was on the show.
Yeah, he's one of our favorites from that season.
Yeah, and he's one of my favorite actors just generally. And, so that was fun. So yeah, no, I sat down and I watched everything straight through. That is an important part of the process, for writing tie-ins.
What did you think of the latter half of Heroes a couple of years on?
What do you mean?
What did you think of, like, because you said you stopped about, halfway through me. Yeah.
The biggest problem I had with the original series overall was better setup than follow through. The 3rd season in particular had some really good setup with what's his name, the elder Petrelli,
Nathan
character.
Oh yeah. Arthur Petrelli.
Or was that season 2? Now I'm losing track.
No, it's season 3. Yeah.
That was season 3. Yeah, that was a very promising setup, and I thought the actual climactic thing didn't entirely work. You know, just in general, my biggest issue, especially with the latter part, was people not actually using their powers all that much. You know, I mean, part of that I'm sure was budgetary, but but even so, I think there needed to be more. There wasn't enough. I mean, the first season was really good at having people, you know, discovering they have powers and using them and figuring out how they work. By the time we got to the 4th season, nobody was really using their powers.
Yeah.
So
that's fair enough. Did you have a favorite character throughout the seasons?
Actually, as cliched as it is, you know, because they were the 2 most popular characters generally, I thought Hero and Claire were the most interesting characters anyhow. And most of that is on the backs of the 2 people playing them. You know, Masaoka made Hero a really wonderful, compelling character. You know, especially for somebody who, you know, like Hero, grew up, you know, reading comic books and such.
I think he's the first person to say Claire, honestly. Isn't he?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
I always from the beginning, I liked Claire because I thought Hayden Panettiere really made her a real person. And made her, and even from the very beginning, she was an interesting, complicated person. And yet also still, you know, basically a teenager. I thought both of those were, which is why I jumped at the opportunity to write Claire also, especially since, you know, I knew she wasn't going to be featured in the new series. Busy as she is, you know, singing country music songs on another network. Exactly. So.
And raising babies.
Yeah.
Oh, that too, yeah.
Real ones, not fake ones on the TV.
So how funny would it have been if she would have gave birth to twins, right?
Yeah, I know, right?
Anyway, how were you approached for writing for the Heroes universe? Was it your agent, or did they reach out to you specifically, or what?
In this case, they reached out to me. The editor at Bechdet is named Al Guthrie, and I'd never worked with him before, but he was familiar with my work. He liked the work I'd done on various other tie-in stuff. I'm not sure which specifically caught his eye, but he knew of me. You know, I'm doing this for 21 years. And so he just came, you know, I was one of the people he approached about doing one. And I jumped, you know, and I absolutely jumped at it. I thought it would be a lot of fun. And it actually worked out really well. Usually when you write tie-in fiction, the only contact you really have with the people producing it are, somebody in the licensing department, particularly if it's something that's ongoing.
Yeah.
Like with the Farscape comic, that was long after the show was off the air, so I was pretty much the only person, me and Rockme were the only ones producing new Farscape material. So, and there wasn't an ongoing TV series to tie into, so there wasn't anything else competing with it. When you're dealing with an ongoing series, usually, you have to, you don't get that much attention from the people producing the show, partly because they're too busy producing a TV show. That was not the case with Heroes. With Heroes, the stuff was approved, by the showrunner. And, which I didn't even realize until I saw the first episode and saw executive producer. Oh crap, that's him. Okay. Wow. And we were kept in the loop on not only the scripts, but on script changes.
Okay. Was it James Middleton?
Yes, thank you.
There's a couple of executive producers, but James Middleton's the guy.
And, so my brain is not entirely working, so, forgive any, mental lapses and infelicities. Yes, James Middleton was the one who gave us the notes and did the approval on the proposals and on the final version. And I knew he was on the production staff. I didn't realize he was the second in command under Tim Crane until the first episode aired. I'm like, oh, wow, okay, because that doesn't usually happen. I mean, admittedly, this is typical for this particular franchise. I mean, here, the first time through, also Heroes had a lot of ancillary material that tied very closely to the series. There was the webcomics and that one novel they did. So, but that was a really good experience, being able to, work that closely and working with people who were invested in making sure that everything was consistent.
Were you as a writer, like, given a specific, idea, or did they have, like, numerous ideas and you kind of picked one?
I had actually pitched a couple of different things, and then they actually came back to me with the idea of doing Claire. That wasn't true for everybody. We were all, it was sort of a collaborative thing. Like, some people did stories they particularly wanted to do. Others had stuff specifically given to them. In my case, they wanted to do, one of the things they really wanted was Claire's,
backstory type thing, I guess. Yeah.
Basically gap filler of what she was doing. Because she's such an important part of the mythos, but was not part of the miniseries. And she was still an important part of the miniseries, even though she wasn't actually in it. So they gave me a bunch of notes as to what they wanted. And then I constructed an actual story around it. Working in, and I worked in a bunch of things they suggested. I came up with some ideas of my own, and it was, that was a very collaborative process. But in my particular case, the impetus came from them. Okay. I don't think that was true for all 6 of them. I mean, obviously the first one, because that was an adaptation of the first episode. But the other 5, were at varying levels as far as that goes.
Okay. If you don't mind, what ideas did you pitch? Or, if you're going to use them for something else, that's fine.
one of the things I had pitched was to do something with, what's his name? The guy in East LA, the armored guy.
Oh, Carlos.
Carlos, yeah. Well, the predecessor, is
Oscar, El Vengador.
Yeah, something with Oscar as El Vengador. That's it. I want to do an El Vengador story. That's somebody else had already pitched an El Vengador story, so I didn't do that. I also, and I'm a little disappointed I didn't get to do this. I wanted to do a sort of Bridge of San Luis Rey riff with the people in the very first episode who had that meeting. Yeah. The ground meeting in the church who then all got killed by Zach. And just, tell their stories, because they were all, aside from, obviously, young Nathan, they were all, or Tommy, they were all killed. And I just thought it would have been cool to just tell, what their stories were leading up to their arrival at that church. But I think the feeling there was that there was some of that was being covered in David Bishop's adaptation of the first episode. So instead they came to me with Claire, and I was fine with that. Like I said, I really liked the character of Claire. I thought that was a great opportunity.
Okay. How much information were you given about Hammer? His name, his nickname is. How much?
I don't remember when I said they were keeping me abreast of script changes. Yeah. The character of Claire's of the father of Claire's children,
Yes.
is one that went through a few different permutations as the writing process went on, because the notes they gave me didn't include that. So I'm like, okay, guys, who's the father of Claire's children? And they finally came back with, we haven't, we're keeping that vague because they want to leave themselves open.
Yeah.
Which is what you do, you don't want to lock yourself into something and then not be able to follow through on it. So, especially with something like that. So I understand why they wanted to keep that vague and save that for a possible later revelation. And then really late in the process, they decided to put in the scenes at the very end of the final episode, where the little notes were left for the twins.
Yeah.
And that was not part of the first script that I'd gotten. That was added in later on. And they put that in there, and all the script said was that he was wearing a trench coat. Hence the bicameral joke. Because I didn't, I was in the original, in the first draft, I had Claire writing a letter to him using a pet name for him. Okay. So basically so that he would not be named. Again, to keep that open for whatever they would have later. And then, once we got the trench coat thing and I saw that part of the script, I adjusted that accordingly. But that was great though. What was cool was that I was able to do that, and one of the advantages of doing these as ebooks is that we could do this pretty late in the process and still not affect the publication date. So that was basically they gave me as much information as they had.
Yeah.
And they did it in such a way that it's set up for any future stories if it happens. Although the show was not renewed, unfortunately, so that's less likely than it was when I wrote it. But you never know.
You never know.
If you'd asked me, I would have said there was no chance of being any more heroes anyway. So
Fair enough. Was Harold? Was it Esposito? Was he originally meant to be Doyle, or was that just a take on the powers?
Oh no, that was that was never intended to be Doyle.
Okay, no problem.
No, he was actually I based him somewhat on an old DC Comics character who was in the Teen Titans named Jericho.
Okay.
It was similar powers to his. So that was just something that I needed somebody who could do that in order to make that part of the story work. And I had fun with his personality too. Yeah. So
that's fine. Just finally about this, just little picky questions on the book and the characters. Can you let us know more about the concept of the original character you came up with, Antoine Mercier, I think it is?
Oh yeah, no. Again, it was just I wanted specifically to. One of the things they had mentioned in the notes they gave me was the idea that the Patrolli movement was something that was happening in Europe. So I wanted to have a protest in Europe, and I went with Paris just because it's an iconic part of Europe. But I wanted it not to be London. I wanted it to be a non-English speaking place, just for the variety. It was really kind of spooky for there to be a terrorist attack on Paris the week. That freaked me out more than a little bit. And I just wanted to have a French character. That particular superpower is one I've always thought would be an interesting one to have, is the ability to manipulate light like that. So that was really, that was basically it. It was a set of powers that I thought of years ago, and I've always wanted to write somebody with that ability. And he was French just because I wanted to do something specifically in France. I was trying to keep the international feel to some extent, and Heroes has always been good about that. Mostly it's been Japan, but even so, they've been good at, not limiting what's going on to just the United States. And also I wanted to show, how, the influence, the United States tends to be at least, for better or worse, influential, on the world stage with, with the European Union following in the U.S.'s footsteps in terms of the Evo Registration Act. So.
Was that before or after you found out that, Tommy took Emily to France?
Don't remember, honestly. I don't remember where I was in the process, where I was in terms of getting the scripts when I wrote it, where that was. It really, because it was a constant stream of not only scripts, but script updates.
Okay.
And, it got pretty crazy there.
That's fine.
How long did it take, to write this book?
I think I did the first draft within a month.
Oh, wow.
It's only 30,000 words. It's about a third the length of a full novel. And I think it might have even been less than that. I don't remember. I write pretty fast.
Okay.
And I've done a bunch of things since then, so I honestly can't keep track.
Was there a lot of back and forth?
Not a huge amount. My editor, Al Guthrie, his notes were fairly straightforward. Ditto the notes from James Middleton. They were all, continuity things or stuff that they were establishing that I didn't know about yet because they hadn't sent me that script yet or something like that. In fact, one of the nicest comments I got actually from James was that he really liked the way I, use the larger tapestry of the Heroes universe, to sort of tie it all together with everything else. And particularly, I mean, they had using Peter was part of the original thing they sent me. Using Siler was my idea because I wanted to pick up on the friendship between Peter and Siler that developed at the end of the fourth season. I actually had a second scene with Siler that they asked me to cut. They wanted me to just keep it to one scene, which was fine.
Okay. Did you, you and Peter J. Wax met up and, there's that nice little Easter egg in both your books about the toothpaste, which I really loved.
Oh, yeah. Peter and Kevin are both friends of mine, and Peter and I actually talked about that. We were both guests at a convention out in Denver called Malcon when we were both working on the things. And he asked me to, because I had one scene with Erica Kravitz, he asked me to send that to him and Kevin. So, just to make sure that, since I was doing basically the beginning of the process that they were, fleshing out in their story. They wanted that scene just so we could be consistent with each other. And he liked that metaphor. So we kept it,
Definitely.
Used it in both of them just for a nice little Easter egg there.
I think all three of you tweeted at us, at our Twitter account when you guys had all met up. Cause I think Peter had sent us a photo of the three of you together, and I was like, "Can you let me know anything about the books?" And then you guys were just like,
Dragon Con and we actually could have gotten. We had Tim Zahn was at Dragon Con. We could have gotten him. But it was the three of us and my fiance were having a meeting with them about something completely different, involving nothing connected to Heroes at all. But we figured, okay, we're all part of this. Let's get a picture. So my fiance is the one who took the picture. And we posted that. And yes, Peter made sure you guys saw it. So that was good.
Oh, I'm just going to be a nerd right now. Sorry. Just kind of off topic because that's just how I roll sometimes. What exactly does the Grandmaster entail? What are those duties?
Nothing whatsoever. It's just it's a Lifetime Achievement Award, basically. The International Association of Media Tie-in Writers was started in the early 2000s basically because we didn't have an association of our own. And the ones that exist really weren't that useful for people writing tie-in fiction. And we thought we should have our own association, our own networking, and our own award. Because tie-in books almost never receive any kind of award consideration by any of, by the Edgars, by the Hugos, by the Nebulas, by the Stokers, none of them. So we made our own.
Really?
So the Scribe Awards are given out at Comic-Con International in San Diego every year. And they also present a Lifetime Achievement Award called the Faust. I got it in 2009. The other winners have included Alan Dean Foster, Peter David, I think AC Crispin one year. I honestly don't remember all of them off the top of my head, but a bunch of I'm in really good company, let's put it that way. And I've also got a nice little award that sits on my bookshelf. Nice. Along with a couple of Scribe nominations. I've never actually won a Scribe Award as such. I've been nominated I think at this point I have the record. I'm the Susan Lucci of the Scribe Award. I've received more nominations without a victory than anybody else. And it could happen again this year. I've got, in fact, one of the things that I submitted, for awards consideration is, the Heroes Reborn novella. So.
Is there a place the fans could vote?
Yeah.
No, it's a juried award. So,
dang it.
Which honestly I prefer, with all due respect to the Hugos. I think I think a juried award of your peers, I think gives the award a bit more, something. In terms of that kind of accolade, I like, it's something that is specifically given by professionals in that end of the field who, have worked in the field and so know what goes into it. And in fact, I've been serving on juries every year as well. And I really enjoy that process. It gives me a chance to see what other people are doing and such. But I've submitted the Heroes and also, my X-Files short story for the short story category. So. That's going to be tough because like everybody in the X-Files anthology submits their story. We're all competing against each other.
Do you find it difficult writing for like already kind of established characters, especially fan favorites, especially, when you've got a massive fandom who think that they know how people will react and all that kind of stuff?
I'm used to it at this point. It is a challenge, and yeah, sometimes you do get people crawling up your butt complaining about how you did something. I got a lot of that when I did my first couple of Supernatural novels, actually, because people have very specific ideas of what's it. Well, it's interesting because when talking about the same book, I had people saying, and in general, most of the responses to my 3 Supernatural novels were actually pretty good, but there were some who did not like it, which was always the case. I'm not going to please everybody, and I don't expect to. But I was amused at particularly in my first one, Nevermore, where people would say, obviously he doesn't like Dean and thinks Dean is an idiot and only likes Sam and writes him better. And then somebody else saying, obviously he only writes Sam and writes Sam better and doesn't like Dean and thinks Dean. It's like, contradictory. Did I say that right?
Sorry?
Yeah. The Supernatural fandom's tough.
Yeah.
I'm a part of it, and it's a mess.
Like I said, the vast majority of them are wonderful people. But every once in a while, every fandom has its hardcore nut bar contingent. I've been dealing it with, I've written in so many different fandoms, Star Trek, Firefly, Farscape, Doctor Who, World of Warcraft. These are all universes that have very passionate fan bases.
Firefly hard because it was such little, compared to Star Trek, such little, core storytelling.
Well, in that particular case, what I did, I wrote the novelization of the movie Serenity. That was, and more recently I did a module for the Firefly role-playing game that Margaret Weiss did last year. But what Firefly fandom lacks in raw numbers, it makes up for in passion. The people who like it really, really like it, and I'm one of them. So I'm part of that fan base. Yeah. That's it's like with Star Trek and with Doctor Who and with Farscape, I was part of in Leverage for that matter. It's case and Heroes. I was a fan of it before they ever hired me to write in it, which isn't always the case, but it wasn't those. There are some where I didn't really have much exposure to it before I started working in it. And, one or two where it didn't, like I did a Command and Conquer novel where, EA, the game company, was in the midst of rebooting Command and Conquer. So even if I had been familiar with the previous iterations of the game, that wouldn't have helped, because they were rebooting it and starting it from scratch. So, and I was in on the ground floor of that. So that was, I wasn't a fan of that, but neither was anybody else. And other cases where people have come to me saying, hey, we like your work on X. Would you like to write a tie-in of Y? And I've said the same thing I always say when people ask me that, which is yes, and then I do the research. It's the same research process, whether I'm a fan or not anyhow. And I've gotten, I wouldn't have gotten into Gene Roddenberry's Andromeda, which was the Kevin Sorbo show from the early part of Millennium. I became a fan of it. The editor at Tor Books, had read my Farscape novel and said, hey, we're doing Andromeda books, want to write one? And I said, okay. And then I sat down and watched the show.
So underrated, that show, by the way.
Yeah, it was, what I did specifically was basically the backstory leading up to the first episode. So it was what, Becca and the Eureka Maru and what Tyr separately were doing that led them to where they wound up in the pilot episode.
Now I know what I'm buying this weekend for my flight.
Good luck finding it. It came out in 2003. It's out of print. I actually have a ton of hardcover copies in my garage, which I sometimes bring to conventions and occasionally sell one of. But talk to me after the podcast. I can hook you up.
Okay.
I was just going back to Heroes Reborn, and the kind of, when you're writing the novel, you have all these characters from the original show that kind of make an appearance, and we find out what happened to them. Was that you're doing, or was that, how much was brought in, how much leeway was given to you, like bringing in people like Gretchen? And I think the best one I liked was Lyle. I really loved that way that you brought him in.
Oh, I brought in who I thought would work for the story, and if I couldn't do it, they told me not to, which is what happened with Silo's second scene. It was like, no, one's enough. We don't want to, and that made sense anyway, because, it's not like Silo ever did the same, stuck with the same thing for more than 6.5 seconds anyway, so,
yeah.
It made sense that he would have moved on to something else by the time that happened. But, no, the bit with Lyle was, was just it was a natural outgrowth of that scene, and it made the scene funnier, so,
Yeah.
But yeah, I had to make sure, I had to leave Peter's eventual fate left, vague, because they didn't establish it on screen one way or the other, which was fine. And I was trying to bring in as many elements as possible, both from the original series and from the new series, without overdoing it. I don't know if you noticed, there's the Thanksgiving scene where, Noah and Casper go to visit that family at Thanksgiving and get them to register.
Yeah.
The Frenches. Yeah. That's the guy that,
it's the Penny guy. The Penny guy. And, he's the guy who Zachary's character kills as well, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh, Casper is. Yes. No, that's the Penny guy. But the people, it's the guy they visit.
Yeah. The one that they shoot in the head. Yeah.
He's actually killed by, our insane psychotic couple in the story.
Yeah.
It's, that was the one after they shot him in the head, and then his dog came over and sat next to him and looked at him. I deliberately did that as a sort of a call forward to it as well, for anybody who might happen to notice it. Because, and I specifically wanted to give him a really wimpy power.
Yeah.
to make them shooting him in the head without knowing what he could do even worse. Because all he could do was see long distances. That wasn't ever likely to hurt anybody.
Should have seen them coming. No, I'm joking.
Yeah. But that, I did that deliberately as well. I wanted to, make it part of the wider tapestry, and not just to tell Claire's story, but just to link the two series as much as possible.
Yeah.
So.
Did you?
And by the way, I deliberately wrote the president as being played by Michael Dorn.
Yeah. I picked up on that one.
I used bits and pieces, like when we heard a little bit of his, re-election acceptance speech. That was actually the end of Barack Obama's acceptance speech in 2012. And when he won re-election.
Did you have,
and I used also the people who were sitting with Claire in the gallery who were singled out were the people who were actually at the 2011 State of the Union address as well.
Huh.
Yeah, I didn't name them, but the occupations and why they were there was the same as from the 2011 State of the Union.
Okay. Did you have time to watch Heroes Reborn? And if so, what did you think of it?
I enjoyed it. It was interesting watching it after reading the scripts.
Yeah.
I did it a couple of times. Like when I was writing Supernatural books, they were sending me scripts ahead of time, so I got to read the scripts beforehand. And it's fascinating to me how the script is only one small part of the process. And what, there are some things where the script gives you a very good idea of what's coming, in other cases where it gives you none whatsoever. And in the case of Heroes Reborn, it was a little of both, depending on the bit. And how you start, I didn't know, aside from the holdovers from the first series and Zachary Levi, I didn't know who was playing who. I didn't, so when I'm reading the scripts, the face and voice I was putting in didn't necessarily match what came later. What's interesting is both the characters of Ren and, Quentin.
Okay.
Those two were actually wound up coming across on screen exactly the way they did on the script.
Okay.
Which is not always a given, particularly with comic relief characters, because the actors usually bring a lot to that. I don't know if those were written with those actors in mind or not. But either they, struck lightning in a bottle in both cases, or they just did a really good job of casting, of picking the right person. But I did enjoy it. There were some elements I thought worked better than others. I particularly liked the relationship between, Tommy and his adopted mother.
Yeah.
that was one of the absolute strengths of the show. I thought that's a case where it actually was elevated beyond what the script gave. The actors really brought a lot to that. You know, I mean, it was there as written, but that's the sort of thing that really depends on how the actors play it. And I thought they did a wonderful job. And I liked that. I did not see Noah Gray Cabey got way older, man. He was a completely different person. I would have liked to have seen more of him, honestly. I thought he was a little underused, as was Hero, although he's busy doing another show in Hawaii, exactly. So, you know.
We
competing network, so, you know. And, you know, if you have a chance to work in Hawaii most of the time, you're gonna stay there.
No, I really liked, Anne and the Tommy and his mothers. I think it was a slow burner as well. Like, it kind of felt a bit like spoilt brat.
HRG.
Yeah, but at the beginning he felt kind of like a spoilt brat, and then she just like, and later on towards the end when she was like basically telling him you got a destiny, it just fell into place with me. I really loved their relationship by the end of it.
So yeah, I think, do you have any projects that you want to plug that you're currently working on that you can talk about?
I am very close to getting approval on my Stargate SG-1 novel, which is called Cully's Wrath. That'll be released by Fandemonium sometime soon, no later than the summer, possibly as early as spring. The way the Stargate novels work, Fandemonium is a small press that only does Stargate novels. They do Stargate SG-1 and Atlantis novels. And because all their sales are print on demand and ebook, they don't schedule anything until MGM approves it. Which is handy because, you know, sometimes licensors take their time approving things. And this way they don't have to be, you know, rushing anybody and they can take the time to get the book right. And then once the book is approved, they schedule it. So, I am told I'm supposed to be getting the last of my notes this week. So hopefully within the next couple of months that book will be out. It's a 5th season adventure of SG-1 and focuses on one of the Goa'uld who was seen in like 2 episodes and never really seen beyond that, Cully. So I fleshed her out a little bit. I am currently working on the final book of my Marvel's Tales of Asgard trilogy, which is 3 novels based on the characters from the Thor mythos of Marvel. The first book is called Dueling with Giants, the Thor book, which is out in ebook now and will be out in print next month, in March. The second book is a Sith book called Even Dragons Have Their Endings, which should be available in May. And I'm currently working on the third book, which is The Warriors 3, which is called Godhood's End. And that I believe is going to be out in July. So, those are coming, and those are the first 3 books in an extensive Marvel Prose license that a company in Canada called Joe Books has. And they're doing other stuff. I know they're doing a Guardians of the Galaxy novel, and I may be doing some other stuff with them as well. Awesome. I've got a story in the X-Files anthology, Trust No One, which is the first of 3 X-Files anthologies that IDW is doing. I have a story in another anthology from IDW called V-Wars Night Terrors, which is the 3rd in Jonathan Mayberry's Shared World Vampire anthology series. I had a story in the first one, and now another one in the 3rd one. It's kind of a sequel. What else? There's the Klingon Art of War that I mentioned. I did a Sleepy Hollow novel called Children of the Revolution that's still available. And in terms of original fiction, I've got short stories on buzzymag.com, for the Story of the Month Club website, which is a subscription web service. The anthology Out of Tune, the anthologies Badass Fairies, It's Elemental, and With Great Power, in The Side of Good, The Side of Evil, and probably some other stuff too that I'm forgetting because, as I mentioned, I'm sick. And the big thing that I'm going to be working on that will be out later this year is the first in my urban fantasy trilogy of novels about a guy named Bromgold, who is a nice Jewish boy from the Bronx who hunts monsters.
Nice.
First book is called A Furnace Sealed, and we're hoping it'll be out in the fall from Wordfire Press.
Awesome.
And I've signed a contract to do 3 books with them, and I'm really looking forward to that. And then there's I'm also going to be doing some Super City Police Department novellas that are going to be done in serial form. That's still being worked out, the details of that, but that's going to be really cool. And that's my original. It's about cops in a city filled with superheroes.
Oh.
But it's an original thing of my own, and it focuses on the nonsense that police forces have to deal with when there are superheroes running around destroying property and beating each other up, and completely ignoring due process. And speaking of police, there's also my fantasy police procedural series, which started with a novel called Dragon Precinct, There are 4 novels and 1 short story collection: Dragon Precinct, Unicorn Precinct, Goblin Precinct, and Griffin Precinct. I am hoping this year to finally write Mermaid Precinct, which is the 5th book in the series, schedule permitting. And I think that's the high points. Oh, I almost forgot. I'm also doing, for Tor.com, I have been doing rewatches of classic TV shows. I started doing Star Trek The Next Generation in 2011, and when that was done, I did Star Trek Deep Space Nine. And then after that ended, I've been doing, right now, I'm concurrently doing 2 50th anniversary rewatches. The original Star Trek, and the 1966 Batman series with Adam West. So every Tuesday is a new Star Trek rewatch. Every Friday is a new Bat rewatch.
Cool. Well, you're a busy man.
The best place to go is my website, which is decandido.net. It's a bit primitive looking right now. I'm in the process of getting it gussied up and dragged kicking and screaming into the 21st century, at which point it'll be an even better resource. But right now it basically links to my blog, my Facebook page, my Twitter feed. It has ordering links for all my most recent works of fiction, awesome, including the Heroes novella, and ways of getting in touch with me, links to the rewatches and all that stuff. So, and very soon I hope it will be better and much nicer. So.
Awesome.
Oh, I forgot one other thing I want to mention, if I may.
Oh yeah.
Last year I put out a short story collection called Without a License, which is a collection of my short fiction that is not in any licensed universes because I don't have the rights to those. It features a Dragon Precinct short story. It features one of my Key West urban fantasy stories, which I've done a bunch of short stories in that world, including the one that was on Buzzy Mag and Story of the Month Club and a bunch of other places. And it's got a Brom Gold short story, which is kind of a preview for the novel series that's coming up. So I recommend that short fiction collection as a good introduction to my original work. If you want to read more of it, because it's got, 3 of the worlds that I'm doing a lot of stories in are represented in that short story collection. So.
Okay, so yeah, that was our interview. We hope you found it entertaining and informative. And until next time,
download the podcast, save the world.